Millennials and Gen Z. You might be forgiven for thinking that you can target these groups the same way because they're quite similar in age. However, there's a lot more that differentiates them than first meets the eye. Hello again everyone, and thanks for tuning in again. This week we're going to be looking at the key differences between Millennials and Gen Zs. So let's get started. So before we dive in, let's all make sure we're on exactly the same page. Millennials refer to a group of people who were born between 1979 and 1995, so their median age is about 32. On the other hand, Gen Zs refer to the group of people who were born later, so 1996 right the way up to 2010, and their median age is about 16. So even though Millennials were coming of age around the time of the technological boom, Gen Zs have never known a time where a phone wasn't a smartphone and internet wasn't lightning fast, and it shows in their aptitude for technology. Gen Zs are better at multitasking with devices than Millennials. Millennials are happy to manage up to 2 devices at once, whereas Millennials could happily manage up to 5 devices at the same time. Both Millennials and Gen Zs are the most digitally savvy across all generations. So if you're looking to target them, it's absolutely vital that you adopt an omni-channel approach, particularly if you're looking to target Gen Zs. It should therefore come as no surprise that both groups choose to communicate with friends, families, and brands through online channels. But there's a big difference in the way that they prefer to do this. Millennials prefer to type, preferring to use text-based apps like WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger. On the other hand, Gen Zs prefer to communicate through video and imagery, so they prefer to communicate through platforms such as Snapchat, TikTok, or Instagram. Again, both groups are huge social media users, but the way that they use and interact with people on the platforms are very different. Millennials are much more likely to use Facebook and Twitter and are more likely to use YouTube and Pinterest than Gen Zs. On the other hand, Gen Zs are more likely to use platforms such as Instagram or Snapchat. Although Gen Zs tend to use fewer social media apps than Millennials, the time they spend on those apps is quite different. On an average day, Millennials tend to max out at about 2.5 hours worth of usage. On the other hand, Gen Zs tend to max out at about 3 hours worth of usage. So moving on to buying experiences, Millennials place more emphasis on the need for good customer experience and look at the holistic buying journey and place more emphasis on that than they do on cost. Whereas Gen Zs will be more inclined to look for value for money and are more likely to go out of their way in order to bag a bargain. There's also a slight difference between the generations when it comes to leaving feedback. Gen Zs are slightly more likely to leave feedback or reviews about products or services they've used. But both Millennials and Gen Zs are the biggest feedback givers across all generations. Another key difference between the generations is in the way that they choose to share their experiences. Millennials tend to be much more open with sharing their personal experiences with the public. They also tend to be more likely to have their profiles set to public view. They're also more likely to post frequent life updates across multiple social media platforms. But Gen Z, on the whole, prefer to keep things a little bit more private. They're more likely to cover the cameras on their laptops, and they're also a little bit more hesitant when it comes to giving out personal details to companies. They also prefer to share content with a select group of friends, preferring to use platforms like Instagram and Snapchat, where content is temporary and not made public. And finally, Gen Zs tend to prioritize individuality more than Millennials. Gen Zs have never known adverts not to be targeted. It's something they've grown up with after all. As such, the expectation for brands to deliver unique and personalized messages and ads to Gen Zs is higher than it is for Millennials. So there we go guys, those are just some quick differences between Millennials and Gen Zs. I hope you found that useful. If you have, make sure you like and share this post, and don't forget to follow the Talkative page so you never miss out on any brand new content. If you need more information on Talkative, head over to talkative.uk. See you soon!